Hey, what's going on, No Nation? It's CJ Wilson here with Dope Talk. Like I said, we're in the middle of our pre-spring position by position breakdown. And next, we have the offensive line, probably the most important unit. Well, not probably the most important unit rather. Of course, the quarterback is the most important position, but the important unit on the team is the offensive line. So we'll go ahead and attack the Alex Atkins-led position group and see what we have looking forward to the spring practice. Before we get started, Dope Talk is brought to you by DASH.FI, the modern charge card for digital ad spend. DASH.FI is a business-to-business corporate expense card program that gets you the highest cash back on the market, starting at 3%. Most companies start off at 1.5. With DASH.FI, we're going to double that up with 3%. If you're not getting cash back for your business-to-business corporate expense purchases, what the hell are you doing exactly? Apply for the DASH.FI MasterCard today. We have the link in the description. So go ahead and apply for DASH.FI. We'll go ahead and get started. The offensive line, like I said, the most important position group on the football field, in my opinion. You guys know how we've been struggling in recent years. The end of, I guess you could say, the end of Jimbo Fisher, the entirety of the Will Tagger era, in the first couple of years of the Mark Norvell era. It's been a struggle to field a competent and coherent offensive line. Injuries, lack of development, all those type of deals played a factor into it. But now we're going into year 4 of Mike Norvell, and Coach Alex Atkins has done a pretty good job, of stabilizing that unit and making it into a pretty productive unit. We want to go ahead and get started with Darius Washington. What more can I say about Darius? He's the best offensive lineman on FSU roster by far. First team all ACC this past season at left tackle. And it's crazy because, as you guys know, Darius is a jack of all trades. He can pretty much play any position on the offensive line, whether it's guard, center, or tackle. He has had time playing the multitude of positions. Right tackle, left tackle, really doesn't matter. He is the jack of all trades on the offensive line. Did you guys know coming into the season he wasn't an initial starter? And the reason being the last couple of years, well, this year was probably the most healthy Darius has been as far as going through a full all-season conditioning program and things like that, and it paid dividends. But in years past, it's been pretty much the same thing. Darius Washington being our best offensive lineman at year's end, but coming into the season, he's been halted by injuries or not having a full all-season due to this, that, and the third. I do think that attributes to possibly playing too early, but we had to play Darius at that point in time just because he was one of the best offensive linemen we had coming into a depleted offensive line room in the first place. But nonetheless, we're right here. Redshirt senior. This is his last year. He's one of the better offensive linemen in the country, in the ACC rather, in the country. But again, I think Darius Washington this upcoming year, no question, he's the best offensive lineman. One of the best players on the team overall. It's going to be great to have him. Ideally, we would like to play him on the inside, preferably a guard position. But due to how things are shaking out, I doubt that will take place. Darius Washington will probably end up being your starting left tackle to go into the season. Best offensive lineman on the team by far. Moving on to the center position, Maurice Smith, 6'3", 296 pounds. It's pretty much been the same issue with Maurice Smith as well. Staying healthy, going through a full all-season program to gain weight. So health and weight, that's been pretty much the two issues with Mo Smith, but he's been our best center by far. Very quick as far as getting off the ball, getting off the line to get into the second level, get into his blocks. He's very good with angles too. Like I said, he's not the biggest guy from a size and weight perspective, but if you can maneuver and use angles in football, offensive line specifically, and have good technique, which Coach Atkins teaches, you can get your blocks and get to your guys in different ways instead of straight mauling them. And I think Maurice Smith is a technician when it comes to that. So he's likely going to be our starting. It's not like he's going to be our starting center going into the season. Granted, any injuries and things like that, we want to have him healthy, like I said, to have a full all season and capitalize and gain more weight. The more you get built by Coach Storms, the better you are for the regular season. I think Mo Smith will definitely be ready for this upcoming season, being that he is healthy, doesn't have any lingering issues or any lingering injuries that carries over to spring practice, which will cause him to miss a certain amount of time. Moving on to Rob Scott. This is, to be quite honest with you, this is pretty much a make or break year for Rob Scott. Just been hampered by injuries. The last couple of years, this last year specifically, it's been pretty much one injury after another. He pretty much missed the majority of the season last year due to injuries. Come back in and played a little bit sparingly within the Georgia game, the Orange Bowl. He got injured in the Orange Bowl. So I do think, and Rob Scott's been playing a long time. He pretty much started as a true freshman for us because he had to. Same with Darius Washington. Most of those guys having to play early due to the lack of depth and development that we had on the roster at that point in time. And I think due to that and not really being able to develop and have all seasons to get built by strong storms and get stronger and things like that, that has kind of carried over to a injury-riddled career for Rob Scott. Very talented, as you guys know, the 2022 season, he was a second-team All-ACC offensive tackle. But again, just injuries on top of injuries that's kind of derailed him the last couple of years. So this is a make-or-break spring for Rob Scott, in my opinion. He has to take that next step and be healthy first and foremost. And then, you know, how can I put this? Be consistently healthy. You can be healthy in the spring practice, but you got to be consistently healthy throughout spring, throughout the summer, throughout training camp, things like that. If Rob Scott can do that, talent-wise, it's there, but it's just the health aspect we haven't been able to get over with recently. So if he can do that, I think Rob Scott could possibly be a factor in the offensive line. At the very least, he can be within the rotation. Jaylen Early, we're starting to get into the Alex Atkins recruits and those guys kind of taking over and becoming the players we thought they would be coming out of the recruiting process. Because as you guys know, this was a very heralded recruit out of Texas. Jaylen Early was a 4-star recruit, had offers from pretty much everywhere. Going into his redshirt sophomore year, around 6'4", 300 plus pounds. This guy, a lot of potential. You hear a lot of great things about Jaylen Early and practice reports and things like that and flashing. We'll see if he's able to take that next step this year and compete for a starting offensive line job, or at the very least be within the rotation. But Jaylen Early is the guy that Coach Alex Atkins, Norvell, and FSU staff is very high on. We'll see if he takes that next step this year and turn that, how can I put this, that potential into actual output this upcoming year. So it's going to be a big spring for Jaylen Early as well. That's going to be a guy to keep an eye on. Jeremiah Byers, as you guys know, the transfer offensive tackle from UTEP. He was the #1 transfer offensive tackle in the country once he hit the portal. Ended up picking FSU over the Ohio State Buckeyes. He struggled a little bit last year, early in the season. Let's be honest. He definitely was a liability at some point in the early point in the season. But at the end of the season, a light flick switched for Jeremiah, and he started being one of the better offensive linemen for FSU, manning that right tackle position. If he could build on the end of the season, and like I said, continue to get better by storms and carry this into the 15 spring practices that we have, I think Jaylen Early locks down the tackle position and would be one of the more productive tackles for FSU. Like I said, I just think it was just jumping from the G5 ranks to the Power 5 ranks. It was an adjustment period for Jeremiah. But if you look at the second half of the season, especially towards the end, he was playing lights out and was one of the better offensive linemen we had. So look for him to go ahead and lock down an offensive tackle position for FSU as well. Speaking of transfers, Richie Leonard IV, transferred from the University of Florida. I think he played the most snaps for the Gators, if I'm not mistaken, for the 2023 season. Very productive, a lot of experience, a lot of playing time under his belt. I think he's going to fit from Cocoa Beach, Florida as well. I think he's going to fit very well within the scheme that FSU likes to run. Richie Leonard is very quick off the ball. His first step is very explosive. He is a very productive and a very good puller in regards to what Florida used him at. He gets to the second level, gets around the edge very fast, no ways to move it, athletic lineman, and that ball is well what FSU likes to do, right? As you guys know, we run counter in a lot of different variations. We pull, counter and power. Those are pretty much like our bread and butter type of plays. This in different variations as far as the run plays. And we pull our guards a multitude of times. Like all of our guards are pullers and have been asked to pull. So you factor in Richie's athleticism with what we want to do scheme-wise, I feel like it's a perfect match. I think Richie Leonard realized that as well, going through the transfer portal process and the vetting process of recruiting him. And of course, FSU, they're very particular in the guys they attack within the transfer portal. I think Richie Leonard fits perfectly with what Alex Atkins wants and what Coach Norvell wants as far as type of offensive lineman, the type of players we run. Like I said, pulling is a very big component for FSU. And in the past, we haven't had those type of guards that can really take that first step and move explosively to their assignment It's been a lot of slow developing, not really guards that can move sideline to sideline laterally in their quickness. So you add a guy like Richie Leonard in to that, I feel like that'd be a perfect complement to what we like to do in the run game. Look for Richie Leonard to compete for a starting spot for sure this upcoming season. This spring is going to be big for him. Speaking of transfers again, TJ Ferguson. We went heavy in the transfer portal for offensive lineman in SEC. Ended up getting TJ Ferguson out of Alabama. He's going to be a redshirt junior. Plays sparingly with the Crimson Tide, but from a physical look and just a sheer look standpoint, he's a first man off a bus type of deal. Really physically imposing, 6'4", 320 plus pounds, but he can move. Very athletic as well. Kind of goes to the Richie Leonard mode that I was speaking about earlier. Has the body type, but he has the athleticism to get to the second level and get around pullers as well. Look for TJ Ferguson to bring a different type of attitude to FSU as far as the physical standpoint and things like that. I think he'll compete for a starting guard position as well. So we'll see how that plays out. Keiondre Jones, another offensive lineman transfer from the SEC, Auburn. 6'3", 232 pounds, excuse me. This is his second year with FSU, going into his senior year. Played a lot of ball for us last year. He was a utility guy, played backup role. But once he went in certain situations, he pretty much gave a lot of light within the run game. He's a physical guy. He's a mauler. There's been plays, snaps rather, where you see him physically imposing his will on a defensive lineman, linebacker, whatever it may be, and not just blocking those guys, but making blocks with emphasis, finishing those guys off. So from a physical standpoint, Keiondre has all the tools. We'll see if he can build during last year and compete for a starting job this year. At the very least, he's going to be very quality depth. But again, that interior position for the guards is going to be a lot of competition with Keiondre Jones, TJ Ferguson, Richie Leonard, Jaylen Early. So it's going to be a lot of competition within that middle group. And of course, so we'll see how that plays out as far as who plays and who starts and things like that. But at the very least, we have a lot of quality depth. And I feel like the guys that may not be named the starter, if injuries happen, because injuries happen all the time, especially on the offensive line, those guys will be able to step in and play, and there won't be any type of drop-off. If you look at FSU offensive lines in the years past, one key injury could pretty much derail and knock off the camaraderie within the offensive line. So I think moving forward now, we have a lot of depth, especially within the interior, that can not necessarily, you can't negate injuries because, you know, if you have a starter, he's clearly the best player, but I would say compensate injuries and kind of offset them to the point where there doesn't really be a huge drop-off with the backup guys coming in because they're just as talented. There's a few other guys I want to name. I'm not going to go through all offensive linemen because we do have a plethora of them, especially, true freshmen that are coming in, things like that. We don't really factor them into playing at all. Take your red shirt this year. Offensive line is a tricky position. It's a position I feel like you have to take time and develop physically, mentally, things like that. If you rush an offensive line to play too soon, I think it can ruin their development, ruin their projection over the years and things like that, or halt it, so to speak. I think, to be honest with you, I think we kind of saw that a little bit in Robert Scott, having to play a little bit too early. And I see the tail end of his career, a bunch of nagging injuries that just linger on and on and on. So you don't want to rush these guys. You want to give them time to develop. Julian Armella is the guy that you want to keep an eye out on. And, of course, Lucas Simmons. He was the prototype offensive tackle that we got from Clearwater Academy a couple cycles ago. 6'7", has all the tools. I don't expect him to play this year as far as his red shirt freshman year, but just keep an eye on him as far as development. I think next year, red shirt sophomore year, he should be primed to take over the starting left tackle and probably be, the prototype left tackle that FSU has been yearning for a long time. But that's all we're going to touch on as far as the offensive linemen. There's a lot of true freshmen that we have coming in. I expect to take a red shirt that will be good players for FSU moving forward. But again, make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. We got more hits coming. Let me know if you feel like I missed the offensive lineman, or who do you guys feel like your starting five would be, or guys who you feel like will take that next step and will be in the rotation of the offensive line. But again, like this video, subscribe to the channel. Next up, we have defense. My favorite. Go Noles.